For our customers that are interested in considering leases versus buying, I'll give you some of the basics that may be helpful. Leasing is really suited for folks who are going to trade in a vehicle every 3 years, and instead of having to purchase it on a traditional 60-month or 72-month contract or laying out the cash, which you wouldn't want to do if you were going to get rid of it in 3 years, leasing gives you an option to be able to not worry about whether you have equity 3 years into a 5-year purchase, as an example, negative equity, having to put additional money down. Leasing eliminates all that. With a lease, you lease a car for, let's say, 3 years. 36-month lease is traditional. There are some 39-month and 42-month leases, and on occasion, people will do a 48-month lease, but most of them are 36 months. And for 36 months, you know that you're going to be able to turn your keys back in to the lender and walk away. You pay tax per payment as opposed to being taxed on the whole amount. The one thing with leasing that many people, this is where people make a mistake, is their driving habits, how many miles a year they do. So with leasing, we can make adjustments for up to 20,000 miles a year. But if you know that you're going to drive between 12 and 15,000 miles a year, and you know that you probably want to roll out of your vehicle in 3 years, leasing is perfect. Keeps your payments down, out of cash out of your pocket, down to a minimum, and it allows you to have a brand new car to drive every 3 years without worrying about paying off the vehicle. Now, one of the questions people ask is, what if I change my mind 3 years down the road? Maybe things change and I want to keep the car. Well, you have that option. You don't have to give it back to the lender. You're in the driver's seat. Pardon the pun. 3 years into the lease, you get to decide whether or not I'm turning the keys back in. If you happen to have equity, sometimes that residual value that is set at the beginning of the lease, they call it a residual, it's essentially going to be your payoff. If at the end of the lease, let's say you've got a residual of $15,000 on any vehicle, and you know that vehicle on a trade is worth $16,000, you can actually trade the vehicle in because you have the right to trade it or turn it back in or buy it. So let's say you got to keep going off to college, or you want to keep the car, you want it to be your main car, you want to keep it as a secondary commuter car, just a car to keep in the family. You have an option to purchase that vehicle at the end of the 3 years. So you're not locked into just turning it in. You're certainly not locked into keeping it. The only thing you have to be cautious about is you got to make sure you don't set up a 12,000 mile a year lease and drive 25,000 miles a year, because that's when it's not advantageous. It's our responsibility to give you all the information so that you can make a decision that is going to be best suited for your driving needs and what's going to work for you in the future. And leasing is a great way to go. But if you're buying a car and you want to keep it forever, sometimes you can lease the car and buy it anyway, but going into a traditional purchase is usually going to give you a payment that's comparable, but it's going to be paid off and you're going to own it. Obviously, you pay tax on it up front. Those are the basic difference between leasing and purchasing. I'm always available to answer questions.